Before the United States, before the 13 colonies, before the conquistadors and the explorers, there was a land. This land, vast and untamed, stretched from the icy Arctic to the tip of South America. It was a land of towering mountains and sweeping plains, dense forests and fertile valleys. This was America in its rawest form, a land untouched by the civilizations that would rise and fall upon its shores. The story of America is a long and complex one, a tapestry woven from the threads of countless cultures and countless lives. It is a story of triumph and tragedy, of innovation and destruction, of hope and despair. To truly understand America, we must first journey back to a time before history was written, to a time when the land itself was the only story to be told. From the ancient civilizations of the Maya, Inca, and Aztec, to the arrival of European explorers, the history of America is a captivating saga. It's a story of exploration, conquest, and the birth of a nation that would go on to shape the world. This journey through America's untold history will take us from the ancient ruins of past civilizations to the battlefields where freedom was won. We will explore the lives of the indigenous people who called this land home for centuries before the arrival of Europeans. We will witness the clash of cultures that shaped the destiny of a continent. We will trace the footsteps of the founding fathers as they fought for independence and forged a new nation, and we will delve into the complex and often troubled history of the United States, examining the events and movements that have shaped the nation we know today. Our journey begins thousands of years ago, long before the arrival of Columbus. It starts with the first Americans, the intrepid hunters and gatherers who crossed the Bering Land Bridge from Asia. These early pioneers, driven by the pursuit of game and the promise of new lands, ventured into a world unknown. They spread across the continent, adapting to its diverse environments and creating unique cultures. From the Arctic Circle to the tip of South America, these indigenous societies thrived. They built villages, mastered agriculture, and developed complex social structures and belief systems. They were the original inhabitants of this land, living in harmony with nature and leaving their mark on the landscape. Their stories, passed down through generations, are etched into the very fabric of America. These first Americans were not a monolith, but a diverse tapestry of cultures, each with its own unique traditions, languages, and beliefs. In the Southwest, the Pueblo people constructed elaborate cliff dwellings and mastered the art of irrigation. Along the Mississippi River, the Mississippian culture built massive earthen mounds and developed a complex trade network. In the Pacific Northwest, tribes like the Tlingit and Haida carved towering totem poles and lived off the bounty of the sea. These societies were not static. They were constantly evolving, adapting to changing climates and forging alliances and rivalries with their neighbors. They developed sophisticated systems of governance, religion, and art. Their stories, often untold or overlooked, are essential to understanding the rich and complex history of America. The arrival of Europeans in the late 15th century marked a turning point in American history. It ushered in an era of exploration, conquest, and colonization that would forever alter the course of the continent. The encounter between these two worlds, so different in their cultures, technologies, and worldviews, had profound and lasting consequences for both. The stories of the indigenous peoples and the European explorers are inextricably intertwined, a complex tapestry of encounters, conflicts, and exchanges. While often portrayed through the lens of European dominance, it's crucial to remember that indigenous peoples were not passive bystanders in this historical drama. They resisted colonization, formed alliances with different European powers, and adapted to the changing world around them. The history of pre-Columbian America is not just a prelude to European arrival, but a rich and vibrant tapestry in its own right. It's a story of cultural diversity, technological innovation, and complex societies that thrived for centuries before the arrival of Europeans. Understanding this history is crucial to appreciating the full scope of the American story. It's also essential to acknowledge the tragic consequences of European colonization. The arrival of Europeans brought disease, warfare, and displacement to indigenous populations. It led to the forced removal of tribes from their ancestral lands, the suppression of their cultures, and the tragic loss of life. This dark chapter in American history must be confronted and understood to fully appreciate the resilience and contributions of indigenous peoples and to work towards a more just and equitable future. Before Europeans arrived, sophisticated civilizations flourished in the Americas. The Maya, Inca, and Aztec built advanced cities, developed complex societies, and made significant achievements in mathematics, astronomy, and engineering. Their legacies, etched in ruins and traditions, highlight the ingenuity and cultural richness of pre-Columbian America. The indigenous peoples of North America shared a profound connection to the land and its resources. They were skilled hunters, gatherers, and farmers, adapting to diverse environments. Their lives were intricately intertwined with the natural world. The Iroquois Confederacy developed sophisticated systems of governance and agriculture. Their principles influenced the U.S. government. Longhouses reflected their strong sense of community. On the Great Plains, tribes like the Lakota followed bison herds. They relied on bison for food, clothing, and tools. Mastery of horsemanship transformed their culture. Along the Pacific Northwest coast, tribes thrived on sea resources. They built elaborate wooden structures adorned with totem poles. Their artistic traditions were renowned for beauty and detail. Diverse cultures shaped North America's landscape for centuries. Their legacy continues to inspire and inform us today. The arrival of Christopher Columbus in 1492 marked a turning point in history, not only for the Americas, but for the world. It initiated an era of exploration, conquest, and colonization that would forever alter the course of human history. The encounter between Europeans and the indigenous peoples of the Americas, though often romanticized, was a complex and often tragic clash of cultures. Columbus's voyages, driven by the pursuit of wealth and a westward route to Asia, opened the floodgates to a wave of European exploration and exploitation. The Spanish conquistadors, driven by gold, glory, and a zeal to convert indigenous populations to Christianity, toppled empires, decimated populations, and plundered the wealth of the Americas. The introduction of diseases, such as smallpox, measles, and influenza, to which indigenous populations had no immunity, proved catastrophic, decimating entire communities. The consequences of European arrival were far-reaching and devastating for the indigenous populations. The introduction of new diseases, warfare, enslavement, and the forced displacement from their ancestral lands led to a dramatic decline in indigenous populations. The cultural exchange, though often portrayed as a one-sided affair, was in fact a complex process of adaptation, resistance, and syncretism. Indigenous peoples adopted European technologies, crops, and customs, while also preserving their own traditions and beliefs. They resisted European encroachment through armed conflict, diplomacy, and strategic alliances. The story of pre-Columbian America is not just a prelude to European colonization, but a vibrant tapestry of diverse cultures, sophisticated civilizations, and complex human stories. It is a history that deserves to be told, not just as a footnote to European conquest, but as a vital and integral part of the human experience. The late 15th and early 16th centuries marked a period of intense exploration and discovery. European powers, particularly Spain and Portugal, spearheaded these voyages, forever changing history. Christopher Columbus's voyages ignited a wave of exploration and colonization. His arrival in the Caribbean in 1492 revealed vast continents previously unknown to Europe. Amerigo Vespucci explored South America, recognizing it as a distinct landmass. These voyages marked the beginning of a new era of global interconnectedness. The arrival of Europeans in the Americas triggered a cataclysmic clash of cultures, forever altering the course of both indigenous and European societies. The encounter was not merely a meeting of different peoples, but a collision of worldviews, technologies, and ways of life. For the indigenous populations, this encounter brought about profound and often devastating consequences. European diseases, such as smallpox, measles, and influenza, to which indigenous populations had no immunity, ripped through communities with terrifying speed and ferocity. Entire villages were decimated, and the social fabric of indigenous societies was torn apart. The demographic collapse caused by disease weakened indigenous resistance to European encroachment, making them more vulnerable to exploitation and conquest. Beyond disease, the arrival of Europeans brought about forced labor, land dispossession, and the systematic suppression of indigenous cultures and beliefs. European powers, driven by a sense of cultural and religious superiority, sought to impose their own values and systems on the indigenous populations. Indigenous peoples were often forced into servitude on plantations or in mines, subjected to brutal treatment and harsh living conditions. The introduction of new technologies, such as firearms, horses, and metal tools, while initially offering some advantages, ultimately shifted the balance of power in favor of the Europeans. Indigenous peoples who had lived in relative equilibrium with their environment for centuries were now confronted with a force that threatened their very existence. Despite the immense challenges they faced, indigenous peoples demonstrated remarkable resilience and adaptability. They resisted European encroachment through armed conflict, diplomacy, and strategic alliances, often playing European powers against each other to protect their interests. They adapted to new technologies, incorporating them into their own cultures, and preserved their traditions and beliefs in the face of immense pressure. The Age of Exploration marked unprecedented discovery and interconnectedness, but left a complex legacy. Encounters between Europeans and indigenous peoples shaped history, leaving lasting impacts. The transatlantic slave trade remains one of history's most horrific chapters. Millions of Africans were forcibly transported and brutally exploited. The legacy of slavery shapes racial dynamics and social injustices today. The Columbian Exchange transformed global ecosystems, diets, and disease patterns. Crops like potatoes and maize revolutionized European agriculture. European livestock transformed indigenous societies in the Americas. The Age of Exploration began a new era of globalization. Trade and cultural exchange enriched societies but also led to exploitation and displacement. The legacies of exploration shape our world today, reminding us to understand history's complexity. By confronting past injustices and acknowledging all cultures, we can work towards a just and equitable future. The Age of Exploration's discoveries were reconnaissance missions of empire. European powers established settlements in the New World. The Spanish led, driven by gold and silver. They toppled empires and enslaved populations. The English sought economic opportunity and religious freedom. The French focused on fur trading and alliances. Rivalries shaped North America's political landscape. The arrival of Europeans in the Americas ignited conflicts over land and resources, clashing with indigenous worldviews. Europeans viewed land as a commodity, while indigenous peoples saw it as sacred. This fundamental difference led to numerous conflicts. Indigenous resistance was met with brutal European tactics. Despite their efforts, indigenous populations faced displacement and dispossession. The collision of European and indigenous cultures led to the tragic decimation of indigenous populations. European diseases like smallpox, measles, and influenza devastated indigenous communities, causing high mortality rates. The demographic collapse weakened societies, making them vulnerable to European exploitation. Disease and displacement left lasting scars on indigenous communities. Forced assimilation in boarding schools led to the loss of languages and cultural traditions. This history of suffering and resilience continues to shape relationships today. The story of American independence begins not on a battlefield, but in the hearts of colonists. Discontent grew as the British Crown's authority became untenable. Unfair taxation turned whispers of protest into a roar for liberty. The cry of "no taxation without representation" echoed through the colonies. British troops in Boston only fueled the desire for independence. Each act of British control pushed the colonies closer to rebellion. On April 19, 1775, tensions between the American colonies and Great Britain erupted in Lexington and Concord, Massachusetts. The Minutemen fiercely resisted British troops, marking the start of the American Revolutionary War. The shot heard round the world signaled the fight for independence. These battles were pivotal in the struggle for American independence. They showed the colonists' resolve to fight for their freedom. News of these engagements spread, galvanizing support for independence. The Second Continental Congress took steps to formalize separation from Great Britain. On July 4, 1776, they adopted the Declaration of Independence. Penned by Thomas Jefferson, it proclaimed the colony's right to self-government. The American Revolution was not a foregone conclusion. The colonists faced the might of the British Empire, yet they possessed a fierce determination to fight for their freedom. Led by General George Washington, the Continental Army endured harsh conditions. The victory at Saratoga in 1777 was a turning point. It convinced France to ally with the United States. French assistance was crucial in tipping the balance of power. The American Revolution culminated in the British surrender at Yorktown, Virginia, in 1781, securing the independence of the United States. The war forged unity among the 13 colonies, marking the birth of a new nation founded on liberty and self-government. The Articles of Confederation proved inadequate, leading to the drafting of the United States Constitution in 1787. The Constitution established federalism and checks and balances, ensuring no one branch could dominate. The Bill of Rights guaranteed fundamental freedoms, inspiring global movements for independence and self-determination. The echoes of revolution had barely faded when the daunting task of building a nation began. The newly formed United States, a patchwork of 13 diverse colonies, embarked on a grand experiment. The Founding Fathers understood the fragility of their creation. George Washington was unanimously elected as the first president. His leadership helped guide the young nation through its formative years. The early years were marked by debates over the proper role of government. These debates reflected a healthy and vibrant democracy. As the United States expanded westward, driven by manifest destiny, its population swelled with immigrants seeking land and freedom. The nation's boundaries pushed westward, displacing Native American tribes through violence and broken treaties. This expansion fueled economic growth but also exacerbated tensions over slavery and states' rights. Slavery, a moral stain on the nation, cast a long shadow over the early republic. The Constitution contained provisions protecting slavery, reflecting political compromises. New states sparked fierce debate over entering the Union as free or slave states. The Missouri Compromise of 1820 temporarily quelled the crisis, but underlying tensions remained. These tensions simmered beneath the surface, waiting for a spark to ignite them. Industrialization in the North contrasted with the agrarian South, reliant on slave labor. These differences created two distinct societies with diverging interests. Tariffs designed to protect American industries fueled sectional tensions. The North favored tariffs, while the South viewed them as harmful. Economic disputes, intertwined with slavery, strained North-South relations, pushing the nation closer to disunion. The election of Abraham Lincoln, a Republican opposed to the expansion of slavery, as president in 1860, proved to be the catalyst for secession and the outbreak of the Civil War. Southern states, fearing that Lincoln's election signaled a threat to their way of life and their peculiar institution of slavery, seceded from the Union, forming the Confederate States of America. The Civil War, a brutal and bloody conflict that pitted brother against brother, tested the very foundations of the nation. It was a war fought not only on battlefields but also in the hearts and minds of Americans, a struggle to determine the meaning of liberty, equality, and the future of the Union. Lincoln, in his Gettysburg Address, eloquently articulated the stakes of the conflict, framing it as a test of whether a nation conceived in liberty, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal, can long endure. The Union victory in 1865 preserved the nation and abolished slavery, formally ending the barbaric practice that had stained the American soul since its founding. The period of Reconstruction that followed sought to rebuild the war-torn South and integrate formerly enslaved people into American society. However, the process of Reconstruction proved to be as challenging and contentious as the war itself, marked by resistance, violence, and political maneuvering. The legacy of slavery and the Civil War continued to cast a long shadow over the nation, shaping race relations, political alliances, and the struggle for civil rights for generations to come. The nation, though scarred by the conflict, had emerged from the crucible of war with a renewed sense of purpose and a commitment to the ideals of liberty and equality for all its citizens. The 20th century dawned, and America found itself at a crossroads. The wounds of the Civil War had healed, leaving behind a nation grappling with industrialization and urbanization. Cities swelled with immigrants seeking opportunity and a share of the American dream. This new era tested the nation's resilience and ideals. The Industrial Revolution accelerated, transforming the nation. Factories drew workers from rural communities and distant shores, cities transformed into bustling metropolises. Industrial might brought prosperity but exposed stark inequalities. The Progressive Era sought to address the ills of industrialization. Progressives fought for workers' rights, women's suffrage and regulation. Figures like Jane Addams and Upton Sinclair galvanized public support for reform. The Progressive Era left a lasting legacy on American society. The dawn of the 20th century saw America emerge as a global power. The Spanish-American War marked America's entry onto the world stage. The Panama Canal solidified America's position as a global power. The 20th century was marked by unprecedented upheaval and conflict. 2 world wars, a global depression, and the rise of totalitarian regimes tested the United States. The nation grappled with the complexities of an interconnected world. World War I saw the United States hesitant to intervene. The sinking of the Lusitania galvanized American public opinion. The U.S. declared war on Germany in 1917, tipping the balance of power. Post-World War I, the U.S. retreated into isolationism. The Roaring Twenties masked deep-seated social and economic tensions. The stock market crash of 1929 ushered in the Great Depression. Millions lost their jobs, homes, and security. President Roosevelt's New Deal provided relief and recovery. The New Deal created jobs and restored faith in the system. The rise of fascism in Europe led to World War II. The attack on Pearl Harbor united the nation against tyranny. The U.S. emerged victorious, ushering in the atomic age and the Cold War. The aftermath of World War II saw the United States emerge as a superpower, facing off against the Soviet Union in a global ideological struggle known as the Cold War. This rivalry shaped global politics for decades, fueling proxy wars, arms races, and a constant atmosphere of tension. The Cold War also had a profound impact on American society. The threat of communism fueled anti-communist hysteria, leading to the Red Scare. The Cold War spurred technological innovation, particularly in aerospace and nuclear technology. The Civil Rights Movement challenged segregation and racial injustice. African Americans, inspired by leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, demanded equality and an end to discrimination. The movement achieved significant victories, including the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The assassination of President John F. Kennedy, the Vietnam War, and the Watergate scandal shook public faith in government. The Vietnam War deeply divided the nation, sparking protests and a counterculture movement. The fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 and the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 marked the end of the Cold War. The United States, now the sole superpower, faced new challenges in a world increasingly defined by terrorism and economic instability. The 21st century dawned, and the United States grappled with the legacies of its past and the challenges of a rapidly changing world. The 9/11 terrorist attacks plunged the nation into a new era of warfare, defined by the fight against terrorism. The United States, a nation forged in revolution and shaped by centuries of struggle, continues to evolve. Its story is a testament to the enduring power of human resilience, the pursuit of liberty and equality, and the ongoing struggle to create a more perfect union. The narrative of America is a testament to the human spirit's capacity for innovation, resilience, and reinvention. It is etched in the nation's diverse landscapes and vibrant tapestry of its people. From ancient roots to modern complexities, America's story is one of evolution, triumph, and struggle. The echoes of the past shape the nation's identity and future. The legacy of slavery and the fight for civil rights, the waves of immigration and the push for innovation, the triumphs of democracy and the struggle to live up to its ideals. Understanding America's past is essential to shaping a just and equitable future. By acknowledging past injustices and celebrating achievements, America can evolve, striving to fulfill its promise as a land of opportunity and freedom for all. The story of America is far from over. It is a narrative shaped by the hopes, dreams, and actions of each generation. As the nation grapples with 21st century challenges, it can draw strength from its legacy of resilience and innovation. America's untold history is a testament to the enduring human spirit and its capacity for progress and change.